All right, everybody, welcome to the 2024 Year-End Prep webinar from Thread. I am Scott Mastley. I am the CHRO, the CRO here at Thread, and I'm excited to see everybody. I feel like I'm sitting in front of my home crowd today because I got so many friends in here, friends who are clients and former coworkers and employees and, all kinds of connections in here and prospects I'm talking to. And so I'm really excited that you've all jumped on today. I am not going to talk about how I feel about last night or this morning, so don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. I know there's a lot of articles that have been going around in HR newsletters about incivility in the workplace due to political discussions, and we're not going to worry about that today. We're just going to worry about what we need to do to wrap up the year and prepare for next year, take care of ourselves, and go from there. So I'm still admitting a few folks, and then I'll let Barb take that over, and I'm going to go ahead and get going. So thanks for jumping on today. I appreciate it. Today's session does count for credit for SHRM and HRCI credit. So all you need to do is just attend the session. And then following this session, what we're going to do is we're going to send you a follow-up that has a copy of the slides, a link to a recording, which will be posted on the threadhcm.com website. We have a section that says resources and then free webinars at threadhcm.com. So you can see past webinars, but you will have a link to see this one as well. We always provide our content for free, so to make it easy for you as you go along. You're also going to get the credit codes for the SHRM and HRCI credits. So those of you who are certified, you will get credit for attending this. And those of you who are not certified, let's get certified. Come on. When this is over, if you have any questions, please follow up. Barb, our marketing director, who is awesome, will probably include a link so that you can schedule time with me for free. I will be glad to answer any questions you've got following this webinar. Usually when we talk about this many topics at once, it will stir up some curiosity about different things. So we all have our strengths. Don't ever hesitate to speak up and ask a question or say, what is that? Or why is that? Or what should I be doing? There's no shame in that. None of us know it all. So speak up, ask questions, and we'll be glad to have it. Everybody is muted because we're recording this, and we want to make this recording as smooth as possible. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat, and we will monitor the chat. And Barb will let me know if we have any questions there, and we'll answer them as we go along. So I like to start this a little differently than your normal kind of HR wrap-up year prep webinar session. I've seen a lot of these out there. It seems to be a trendy thing to talk about right now. But I want to start with you. Let's make this about you. It's not about me. It's about you. So most of us work to live, as one of my friends and former coworkers said on LinkedIn the other day. So don't make this your whole world. Don't tie up, your identity and everything else is not your job. It's just part of what you do to support how you want to live your life, right? And I want you to think about the fact that if you don't have your health, everything else is second. So we want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself first. And what does this mean? Well, anything that's on this slide, think about that. If you have goals for 2025, something you've thought about, you know how fast the years go, especially when you get older. So all you got to do is take those goals, write down the steps, and start today. Right? Break them down into small steps, little things you can do, and start with what can I do today, and do that thing, and you'll be on your way. So that's awesome. How do you want to grow? How do you want to learn? Would you like to be certified this year? If you're not certified in HR, then 2025 sounds like a great year to do it. All it takes is a commitment. It's registering for the course, registering for the test, putting your money down, and then setting aside some time to immerse yourself so you only have to take that test once. If you have any questions about what course you should take or the best way to do that, just let me know, and I'll be glad to point you in the right direction or give you recommendations to make that easier for you. Have connections that help out with those things and have a pretty good success rate. How do you want to contribute? to the business, to your department, to your team? Or is there anything you want to change? Think about that, right? What are your growth opportunities? If there are certain areas of HR that you have not experienced yet and you would like to experience, then volunteer for something, get involved. How can you expose yourself to those? When we say we do HR, people think we do everything, right? Benefits, payroll, compliance, recruiting, whatever it is, strategy, all of that. But none of us do all of that. We all are great at some of it and either don't have experience or don't enjoy or don't have time to mess with the other parts of it. So build this out in the way you want to by taking a little time to take stock and say, where do I want to grow? What would I like to learn? How would I like to improve? And then if there's something you've been sitting on, I would say go ahead and make that decision. If there's something that's waking you up in the middle of the night, stop stewing about it, get on it, do what you got to do. It will just alleviate all that stress from your body and your mind. And then lastly, what's most important here is scheduling time to laugh with your friends. And again, I know this is not the norm. Really important. That's why I'm spending some time on it right up front. I have a standing session every other Thursday night with a group of guys, for beer and burger night. And as we've gotten older, we're all in our mid 50s, some in their 60s now. And some guys drink water and eat salad, and we're out of there by 7:30. So it's not a big deal. But everybody who can show up shows up, and we have a great time and we laugh a lot. And that is worth more than you can ever count. So if you don't get that time and you're working too hard, schedule that time, put it on your calendar, make it a priority, make it happen. And then the last thing I would say is, if you really want to succeed in HR, some of us are in organizations who place a high value on HR. Some of us are in organizations where they say, I wish we didn't have to have it, but we do. So you're in charge of it. Congratulations. And most of us who've been in HR a while have experienced that feeling. The best advice I can give you is to understand how your company succeeds and ask yourself, how am I solving for the CEO? What are his or her concerns, challenges, problems, obstacles, and how am I helping to solve those? If you're not helping to solve those, then find a way to help solve those things and contribute, and that will increase the value of your position within the organization. Technology for a better life. Okay, 2025, lots of different themes coming up. What's different in the world for HR, right? AI is a big thing, but technology has come a long way since I started in HR and had to do hand-drawn trucks for my safety newsletter and copy and paste them and send them out. You should definitely embrace technology and analytics. As a matter of fact, I looked on SHRM this morning on what they recommend for the top priorities for 2025. And number one from SHRM was embrace technology and analytics. So take advantage of the technology that you've got. Use it to help yourself save time, to be more productive, to be more efficient. Reduce your manual workload by leveraging that technology. Obviously, Thread, we sell payroll software and HR support services, right? So we sell HR software called iSolved, which has everything. And then we sell HR consulting, which is my department. And we support the person wearing the HR hat, whether that's one person or whether it's a big company that has 6 people in their department, we can support them just as well. So our managed services has access to any of our clients' iSolve accounts, and we help them minimize that manual work. But you should take advantage of that, whatever system you're on. I think a lot of you are on iSolve with Thread, but if you're not, no biggie. We'll see you eventually, and take advantage of what you've got while you've got it. Any software worth the money is going to be incorporating artificial intelligence and AI, pieces of it. Maybe not all of it, but pieces of it. So be ready for that. I don't want you to worry about AI stealing your job. It's probably not going to happen. AI is going to replace some jobs, but there's too much going on with HR right now for that to happen, and I'll explain that along the way. But I would not use AI for compliance. The answers are not complete enough. They don't handle the kind of it depends scenarios that come up with HR, the if then then that scenarios that can just spider web all over the place. I do think it's great if you want a quick outline or a draft or a message or something like that, then that's great. And then if you want to build it into your software to just automate certain things, that's great as well. And that will definitely be happening more and more. Um, the technology that it's available now is just super cool. We have a digital link for posters that you can just send in offer letters or anything you want. It's $12 a month with us. And no matter how many employees you have, no matter how many locations you have, you just send the link, your employee clicks on it, they enter their zip code, and they see all their posters. This is because, during COVID, we all went hybrid, remote, people went home. Some big companies coming back to the office. A lot of smaller ones are not. But however you do it, hybrid or remote, in office or whatever, you have options now that were literally not available a couple of years ago. Predictive people analytics is a module that we have within iSolved at Thread in our payroll software that is mind-blowing. And if you don't have something like that in your current software, I would say ask for it, because it will literally give you your turnover metrics broken down by manager, by employee, by job, by tenure, by department, by you name it, it's there, as well as EEO demographic information, DEI information, anything that you're searching for in terms of analytics or metrics relative to your employee population or data, it is there and you can get it within seconds. So if you have not seen that, please follow up and ask to see that, because it is super, super cool. If you are doing hiring, so I get it if you're doing, one a month or whatever. People say, well, I'm only hiring one person a month. It's no big deal. Well, how many applicants do you get when you post one job? For us, it can be 100 plus for one job. So the reason I recommend that everybody use an applicant tracking system is to capture all of those candidates, because some of them might be right for this position, but maybe great for the next one. And you can qualify, disqualify, move them around as needed, and go back to them if you need to. But it helps you to capture those. And most good applicant tracking systems will also help you to communicate directly with any candidates as you're going along. So it's super helpful. If you are still doing paper onboarding, applicants and new hire forms and stuff like that, then come on over. Let's talk. The modern technology gets you out of that process, and I promise you anyone can do it. The one thing we hear a lot when we're talking with prospects who eventually become new clients at Thread is our employee population is not computer savvy, or they're going to struggle with clocking in and out on their phone, or you fill in the blank, right? And then every time we start with that client, we set up this technology and train them, and then it happens and they go, oh, okay, wow, that was a lot easier than I thought. I promise you it can happen. If you're worried about going from paper to paperless, is very possible. We can help you with that. Any decent payroll software is going to have a digital onboarding process where you don't have to use paper anymore. And they're also going to have a great learning management system. You have states that have annual requirements now for specific kinds of training, in addition to like safety training that's required, and then all the training that you would like to customize and present as well. The learning management system helps you automate that, build paths based on role, state, however you want to do it, automatically assign those with auto reminders. You can build quizzes, you can do certificates, badges, all that kind of stuff. All of that's there. So, and I know some of y'all don't work for big companies and you're saying, I don't have the budget to pay for everything I want. Well, just start with one thing and, make your life better and your job more enjoyable, because you're leveraging this awesome technology that's out here that, if you're like me, none of this was available when we started in HR. We did everything by hand, and doing turnover reports took me 2 days, right? Now you can do it in 30 seconds. Just run the report, boom, filter it, boom, you're good to go. It's unbelievable. Okay. Technology for a better life. Take advantage of that. Don't be afraid of it. Learn how to use it. Ask questions. Get extra training if you need it. Keep asking until you understand it. And that's me talking to myself, because I struggle with it sometimes. My whole team makes fun of me. And they basically say, if we design a process, even on our ops team or any department within Thread, they schedule time with Scott Mastley and say, if he can follow this process and actually do what's in it, then the process is complete, because that's how bad I am and I need help. If I can do it, anybody can do it, believe me. All right, reports and notices. So things that are going to come up at the end of the year to be prepared for. The OSHA record keeping, if you have more than 10 employees, you're required to do the OSHA record keeping, which is the 300 and 300A, the log of injuries, and then the summary of injuries. Some of y'all might be familiar with that. If you're not familiar with anything that I'm talking about, please feel free to just speak up, ask a question. I see we've got a couple chats here. One is from Barb and what she's going to do. And there we go. Okay, cool. So the OSHA log and OSHA summary, if you have more than 10 employees, you've got to post that OSHA summary, not the log with people's names and description of their injuries, but the summary from February to April. That means sticking it on the wall. And then after the end of April, you can take that down, stick it in your file, and you keep those for 5 years. So OSHA logs, you always keep for 5 years. OSHA can ask for those at any time, and you need to have the last 5 years ready to go. If you don't know where those are or what those are, please follow up, and we'd be glad to help you with that. There's also great information on OSHA.gov that can walk you through the record keeping requirements, forms, and everything. If you have 20 to 249 employees and you're on a list of NAICS code, those industry codes on the OSHA website, then you have to submit your injury tracking application, the ITA it's called, and you have to do that online. So if you have any questions about that, just check it out or reach out. We can point you in the right direction. And then you've also got EEO1 reports that are required for companies that have 100 employees or more, or if it's a 50-employee company that's a federal contractor that has a contract of $50,000 or more, you're required to submit that EEO1 report. So we always recommend that you do a EEO1 data audit during the year, towards the end of the year, or right in the beginning of the year is a good time to do it, to make sure that you have all of the data you need, that you are including the voluntary EEO1 designation form in your new hire packet or your onboarding packet, so that you can capture that information. But if you're missing information, you can enter the information based on your observation, or you can release that form to your employees, ask them to complete it, gather that information. That way, when you go to run your EEO1 report, it's complete and easy, boom, and you're not missing anything. So take the time to prepare for that by making sure you have all of the information that you need. Last year, the EEO1 portal opened April through July 2024, but since 2018, it has been all over the calendar. Prior to that, it was always the same time every year in the fall, but it's changed almost every year, the last 5 or 6 years. So I don't know exactly what it's going to be in 2025, but I'm guessing that it will be around this time, April to July, something like that. So we'll just see what happens. And then also want you to think about what's required during the year. So you have a Medicare Part D notice that goes along with a CHIP notice, which is the children's insurance. And those can be sent out together as long as they're separate forms, so they're clear what they are. And then at the end of the year, you've got to do your 1094 if you are compliant with the Affordable Care Act or covered by that, right? So 1094 is basically the cover sheet to the IRS, and the 1095 is what goes to your employees. Again, the 1095 is not submitted by your employees. They just get it and can stick it in a folder if they want, if anybody ever asks for it. But the 1094, 1095, if you have your benefits module with Thread and are doing your open enrollment through Thread, then we will produce those for you. So we'll do your W-2s, 1094s, 1095s, things like that. If you're doing your open enrollment through your broker, usually through something like Employee Navigator, then they will typically be the ones to produce those for you. But just make sure they're being done so you're compliant with that and they get out on time. The deadline for those right now is February 28th if it's on paper. In other words, they're being printed and mailed, or March 31st if you're submitting them electronically. So you can do that to the IRS electronically as well. Some states require additional state reporting, such as California, DC, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. And then when we're talking about posters, I'll take a breath because I know I talk a lot. When we're talking about posters, physical posters are still required if you have physical locations. So if you have a physical location, you still have to have that all-in-one federal and state poster. Some states require that workers' comp physician list, like Georgia, where that's okay. So look for those. Let us know if you need help with your posters. If you're a client, we can hook you up with an automated thing where you automatically get the all-in-one federal and state poster every year with the state updates automatically sent to you. And we can provide you with a digital link, which is just super easy and works great. So pay attention to any state requirements as well. At the end of the year or towards the end of the year is a good time to say, okay, we might be sending out W-2s. Now, some companies will just tell their employees, here's how you access and download your W-2 in the system. And that's a great way to do it as long as they can do it, get to it, no problem. If you're mailing out W-2s, make sure you're checking your addresses for employees, especially inactive employees, because you want to make sure that you don't get a stack of returned W-2s in January and February sent back to you. And then you're like, what do I do with this, right? Every HR person knows that thing where you have a drawer full of W-2s and you're like, what do I do with this now? So check those, confirm those addresses now. If you have any employees who worked for you during 2024, make sure you have their correct personal address so they get that W-2 if you're mailing those out. And I'm going to check the chat here. So it looks like there is a poll that's out here available in the chat that says, how prepared do you feel for wrapping up 2024 and kicking off 2025? And I have no idea how to launch that poll. But it looks like
I launched it, Scott. We're
okay,
good.
Barb did it. Thank you, Barb. Can you see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, awesome. So I see some of y'all are taking a minute just to answer this poll. Looks like about half of you have answered so far. Go ahead and take a second. Just let me know. How prepared do you feel for wrapping up 2024 and kicking off 2025? I've got 19 of 30. And it looks like right now, 21 of 30. Okay, we're getting there. That's right. I'm one of those participation guys. So I'm not the guy who gives everybody a pass and goes, don't worry about it. I want everybody to click on it and let me know how you're doing. I'm just curious.
We got one big winner who is they're so prepared that they're just here for the credits. A lot of people coming in at about an 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10. We got a few 5 out of 10. So good thing that you're here. We're happy to have you. I'm gonna shut this poll down and let you get going, Scott.
Okay. Yeah, that's why we're here. Pretty cool. All right, I'm shutting that down. Boom, boom, boom. All right, follow up. Yep, got it. Okay, I'm moving forward here. Pre-hire process. So one thing to think about is, how do you want to stand out as an HR department, as an HR professional, as a company, right? A great way you can do this is to think about your pre-hire process. Now, most people think about when the new employee starts, and they'll try to put some time into that. We're going to talk about it, but the pre-hire process is really important. We have a free webinar that Barb, our kick-ass marketing director, and Christina Fiorenza, who is the best HR person ever, who's our HR engagement manager, together they combined and presented a super cool free webinar on social media and recruiting. And one of the things I learned from watching that was 90% of Gen Zs look at social media such as LinkedIn, X, Glassdoor to research the company's reputation, the brand, the job, what you're doing in the community, what you stand for, all that kind of stuff. So those things do matter. And I want you to think about that in your pre-hire process. If you have not gone out and read your Google reviews and Glassdoor reviews on your company, I would put a little bit on your calendar to do that and see what people are saying about you, because that could either help or hurt your recruiting efforts as you go. One of the things that's fairly new is pay range requirements. So right now there are 8 states that do require that you either post the pay range in the job posting or you share it once the applicant asks for it. Depending on the state, they're a little different there, and there are about 15 other states who are considering adding that as well. So a lot going on with pay ranges, and the big question is, do you have them? Do you know what your pay range is for each position? Do you compare with market data? Do you know if your current employees fit within the pay ranges you've defined? Are you looking at the top end of that pay range and moving it each year with inflation and cost of living so that eventually positions don't just bypass it and be way outside of it? That's something to really pay attention to. This is a goal for a lot of HR people that we start working with. Is I would love it if we had pay ranges. A universal theme among small businesses is that their pay is typically all over the place and they want to get that under control. So that's a good goal to have for 2025. When you are looking at your pre-hire process, look at your career page. Is it linked to your applicant tracking? Is it up to date? I see a lot of noise online with people complaining on LinkedIn about open jobs posted on career pages that don't actually exist. So you don't want to be that person who's leaving jobs out there all year, whether you actually have an opening or not. I would take it down if you're not actively interviewing or recruiting for it, just to avoid that. And then how do you stand out? The main way you can stand out in this pre-hire process is how you communicate. My daughter just got a job, started last week or this week. I'm really excited for her. But prior to that, she had interviewed with a big company which provides natural gas. A lot of you who are living around me probably use it. But she interviewed with them and then never heard from them again. They never followed up. They never said, here's what's happening or not happening, just nothing. And so that was a pretty negative experience for her. And I was like, how can a company that big with that many people in their HR department and in the recruiting department fail to just say, hey, we're moving on. Good luck. Wish you the best. Just an automated email is all it takes. So the little things like following up and commuting make a big difference. At Thread, we are a high performance, high culture company. That's what we're about. And we align ourselves with high performance, high culture companies. And to stand up to that, we make sure that we communicate extensively during our pre-hire process, meaning we will say, this is what's happening next. This is how long it should take. This is where you're at in the process. If you don't hear from me by this date, blah, blah, blah. We always follow up and let them know what's going on, even to the point where sometimes I will give people feedback on how they interviewed or their resume to help them in their next search. Drug screening, I get questions about that a lot. Can we still drug screen? There are so many states that have legalized marijuana medicinally or recreationally, and yes, you still can. Pretty much everywhere, do drug screening if you want. We do have clients who are in Colorado who say it's impossible. They're like, we wouldn't be able to hire anybody if we said you fail a drug test for marijuana. So a lot of companies have stopped doing that, or they've just said, we're going to ignore the result for marijuana, pay attention to the other, more serious stuff, right? And those are the words that I hear occasionally. So drug screening is still okay. There are still debates about whether someone is impaired or not. That's a state by state thing, but I would definitely research your state laws on what's okay, what's not okay for drug screening, when you should do it. I typically don't do anything until after somebody's accepted the offer letter. Then we get their signed authorization for background and drug screen, do that kind of stuff, and the offer is contingent upon those results, okay? Audit is talking about your pre-hire process. Do you have an application? There are many, many companies who still use an application that they bought from Office Max that's sitting on the counter and say, grab one and bring it back in. Some of those applications are really out of date and don't comply with modern state and federal laws in terms of asking about past wage history, criminal history, age, Social Security, all kinds of things like that. So if you have not looked at your application, if you use one, definitely take a second look at that as part of this year-end wrap-up to say, I want to make sure that that's not creating any kind of extra exposure for us, okay? Forms and policies. I know I'm flying, but we got a lot to cover, and this is being recorded, so you can revisit it later if I went too fast for you. Forms and policies. Always make sure you review your handbook at least once a year. This is usually the number one thing that our clients say, can we start with this? We need multi-state compliant handbook that fits us, that is not going to create problems for us. A good handbook sets clear expectations, reduces uncertainty, welcomes employees, and affirms your company values. That's what you want it to do. You want it to help your managers say, this is our policy, remove the gray areas, help your policies understand what's okay, what's not okay, what the expectations are, and you want it to reflect your personality of your organization. We often see companies who have not updated their EEO policies, appearance policies, religious discrimination, specific language about performance, wages, state law addendums, which state laws typically involve things like leave policies, crown laws, which have to do with hairdo protections, commuter benefits, scheduling minimum pay requirements, like if you change someone's schedule the same day, or if you tell them they need to come in but they work less than 2 hours, how much do you need to pay them? All those things need to be included in the handbook if they are relevant in the states that you operate in, okay? New I-9 form, I want to make sure that you from I-9. And some of y'all have just joined or have joined during this webinar. Don't worry. Like I said, this is being recorded, so you can get the full thing following this webinar. You'll get an email from Barb, our marketing director, with a copy of the slides, a link to the recording, a link to be able to follow, book free time on my calendar, ask me questions. I'm glad to help. The new I-9 form, the date that it was created was August 1, 23. It will either have an expiration date of 7/26 or 5/27, right? Either one of those is okay right now. Once in August 2026, you have to switch to the one that has the 5/27 expiration date. The only thing you need to do now is go, okay, are we using the correct form every time we hire somebody right now? When you ever get an I-9 audit, I've only had maybe 3 in 25 plus years of doing HR, so it doesn't happen a lot. But when it does happen, they want to know you're not using an expired form. We see this a lot when we do I-9 audits for new clients. A typical percentage of I-9s that are incorrect, incomplete is around 60, 70%. So that is standard. Most I-9s are incomplete, incorrect, the expired form. We see it all the time. Technology is helping with this. Now, a lot of you are using the I-9 that's built into the digital onboarding within the payroll platform like iSolve that we use at Thread. And that makes things much easier, and it's getting better. So if anyone can chat, the first person who chats in the correct time that you have to retain an I-9 will get a Thread swag bag in the mail. Who is going to chat in the correct amount of time that you need to retain an I-9? This is sometimes a tough one. I'm looking at the chat. And I don't see anyone chiming in. Somebody take a guess. Oh, we got a winner. We got a winner. I know who it is. I'm not going to announce names, but the initials are K and K. And it is 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after the date of termination, whichever is longer. That is correct. So anyone who guessed that had the correct guess. And congratulations, because that is one of those little known things that a lot of people don't know. If you have the I-9, you want to keep it 3 years past the date of hire or 1 year past the date of termination, whichever is longer, okay? Then once you've hit that point, you can shred it, delete it, purge it, do whatever you want. I am always of the opinion that I don't want to show the government anything that I don't have to show them. So I never give them more than they ask for. And if there's something I can get rid of, I get rid of it. Those OSHA logs after 5 years, they're gone. Make sure you're looking at your job descriptions. We see this all the time. Job descriptions are totally out of date, not relevant. Or they'll say you have to have a master's degree for this position. And I'll say, how many current people in this position at your company have a master's degree? None. Okay. Let's update that. It doesn't really matter. Put in the physical requirements, and then you should have a little waiver sign off at the bottom. Says, I understand these expectations, physical requirements, everything. I'm capable of performing these. Make sure you have the right format for your job descriptions and that they're relevant and updated every year. Always look at your pre-hire and new hire forms. Performance management toolkit. Like, how are you doing performance management? What are you giving to your supervisors and managers? Do they have a simple tool like, hey, here's a coaching form, here's a warning form, here's a way to document these counseling conversations, whatever language you use, make it easy for them, because that's a challenge for most managers and supervisors. And then train them as much as you can on how to do it, because a majority of people that we talk to hesitate to have any conversation like this because they feel like it's confrontational. See, even then, I meant to say conversation, and I actually made up a word, confrontation. So yeah, it's a conversation. It does not have to be confrontational, and training your managers helps them with that. And we can help you with that as well. So spend some time on that. Employee agreements. I know you've heard a lot about non-competes, that they were shut down completely, and then court said, nope, you don't have the authority to do that. It will probably land eventually somewhere in where it will say non-competes for like highly compensated or your senior VP of sales or something like that, but everybody else is probably not worth the ink to do a non-compete for them. It is okay to do non-solicitation, like, hey, don't take our employees and our clients. That's totally fine. That's very different than a non-compete, which says you can't do what you do, right, within this geographic area within a certain time frame, and those are falling out of favor across the country, except for very certain specific positions. And then benefit summary. This is something you don't see that much anymore in small businesses. You see it with big businesses, but I like to see this in a small business where you give your employees a one sheet that just goes, these are the benefits. It also helps when you're recruiting to give to applicants, go, these are our benefits, here's what they cost, here are your options. It helps them make a really good informed decision. And then identifying your compliance gaps. So there are so many compliance laws and rules and court cases out there that it is very difficult to keep up with that. We subscribe to many resources and pay for many resources and are on every employment law firm newsletter, webinar, everything else, just like you are, I'm sure. And we're logging into SHRM, and we use a site called Mineral. Some of y'all may have heard of that as well, that gives you access to all the state and federal laws. It's updated in real time, and it's a great resource. We share that with all of our clients, so they have access to it just for their convenience. But the multi-state is the biggest challenge for everybody. If you're operating in multiple states, this is probably your number one place to start when you're thinking about compliance, because you got to know, what are the rules when you hire somebody? What can you do and not do in that process? What are the rules when you pay them? What are the rules when they need to take certain kinds of leave, right? There are leaves talking about pregnancy, adoption, workplace violence, victim leave, witness leave, disability leave, religion leave, voting leave, family medical leave, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. So you got to know what those are, so you don't just accidentally go out of compliance. Minimum wage is pretty easy. Just keep up with that. If you're a client of ours in Mineral, there's a minimum wage map. You just click on your state and it tells you what it is. It's super easy. And then we will help you with that as well. Job posting requirements. Like I said, some states require salary range in the job posting. Some require certain language to be out there in the job posting, or access to certain documents within the company. So make sure you know what those are. There are state training requirements in addition to federal training requirements. Like OSHA has federal training requirements for specific types of roles that are safety related. And then there are now 6 states that require specific kinds of harassment, sexual harassment training. California, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, New York, they all require that. And then New York and Illinois have local laws that go beyond the state laws. So California, Louisiana, Illinois, New York, there are places that have local laws that go beyond, you have federal, then state, and then even local, which may be county things. Those are tough to keep up with too. So a lot to pay attention to, but make sure you're hitting these training requirements. Use your learning management system just to automate all of that and make it super, super easy. Make sure you got the correct I-9 in your payroll platform. I have seen some payroll platforms out there, not ours, that fail to update the actual I-9 form in their platform, believe it or not. So make sure you ask the question, is this the updated form that we're using right now? So you're in compliance. And a lot of our clients, when we start with them, we say, are you doing E-Verify? And they go, E-Ver what? And we say, okay, you definitely need to be using E-Verify. I see that Barb just chatted out a minimum wage table. This is pretty cool. And then she also just put in the chat a link that I found just in the last few days preparing for this webinar that shows state by state what the requirements are for E-Verify. So you can easily click that link, click on the states that you're in, and it'll tell you whether E-Verify is required for you or not. Some of our clients will say, I'm only going to do it in the states where it's required. And some say, if I'm doing it for somebody, I'm going to do it for everybody, right? And that's okay too. It's up to you, but we can help you with that process. And then know what the requirements are, the overlap of the Family Medical Leave, Americans with Disability Act, and workers' comp. There's a little bit of overlap there. Like if you have somebody out on workers' comp, do they qualify for ADA? Should you go through the interactive process with them? What about FMLA? What about if it's a personal injury, not a work-related injury, and they've got a disability? Do they qualify for FMLA? Is there any overlap with workers' comp, right? All those questions get pretty murky. So make sure you're on top of those and you know how those overlap. The biggest thing to be aware of is if your FMLA policy says, if you fail to return at the end of FMLA leave, you lose your job, right? Well, you should change that language to say something like, if you fail to return at the end of FMLA leave without getting pre-approved extension due to a disability, something like that. Because sometimes somebody may have a disability and they need extended leave beyond what's required under FMLA, and typically you would be required to do that. One of the things we would always do if you're working with us for our HR support services that we call managed services is that we would audit your employee files, your I-9s, your E-Verify records, your wage and hour practices, your handbook, your forms, your policies. We're going to look at all of these things and let you know where you're in compliance, where you're out of compliance, and whether you're working with us or someone else. I know when I was an HR department of one, man, I needed help. And if I ever got it, I welcomed it so much. Please don't ever be threatened by an HR consultant because we are on your team. We are here to support you. You are our heroes. We're here to be your champion and to help save you time and do as much work for you as we can, make things easier for you. Okay, still going here. I hope you're still with me. I hope you don't have me muted out and you're watching, the news channel stuff off to the side. This is important. Wage and hour compliance is a biggie. This is the low-hanging fruit of the compliance spectrum, in my opinion. I am surprised all the time that there aren't more law firms existing solely on wage and hour claims, because it would be so easy for them to go out here and make money off small businesses that are not in compliance with wage and hour rules. So salary level increase is the big deal. I know that most of y'all are aware of this, that it jumped from $35,568 up to $43,888. And that was for white collar exemption. So if you want to call someone salaried exempt and they're a white collar exemption, like administrative, professional, managerial, or executive, whatever you call it, then they have to be making $43,888 a year. Now, that started in July. In January 1, 2025, that is scheduled to increase to $58,656. That is a 65% raise in 1 year. That's over $23,000. So pretty sizable raise. Most small businesses cannot afford that, probably have not budgeted for that. And it would be a very big deal for them to just give everybody a raise. They're calling salaried up to that amount if they weren't already making it. We do have some clients who, there's no one on their team close to making less than that, so it's not a problem. But for many of our clients, this is going to be a big challenge. And my advice is, let's wait and see. Be prepared, but wait and see. And by be prepared, what I mean is identify everybody that you're calling salaried exempt, okay? Run a report, salaried exempt, and what their pay is. Carve out all the hourly people, so now you're just looking at the salaried exempt positions and what they're making. And then say, okay, who is making less than $58,656 right now? Everybody who's already making that, carve them out of the list. And now you're only looking at this small group of people. And then you have to say, how close are they? If they're making $57,900, then I would probably give them a $1,000 raise and say, you're good, you're still salaried exempt, and keep cooking. If they're not even close, then you need to plan ahead to make them an hourly non-exempt employee, train them on how to clock in and out, get them set up in your payroll platform so that they can clock in and out, track time, that they understand overtime, et cetera, and go from there. So plan for that, be prepared, but I wouldn't go out and give any raises yet because I don't know what's going to happen with this based on election results. This number may change. So for me, I would wait and see, even probably past January 1st. If I had anything, that's just me. It's up to you what kind of risk you can tolerate. But I'm not afraid to do a little retro pay if I have to, if it's a few weeks later. So just communicate to your employees what you're doing, what your strategy is, so everybody understands. Highly compensated, salaried exempt positions jumped from 107,432 to in January will be 151,164. So that's a $43,732 raise in 1 year, which is pretty amazing. Doctors, lawyers, and teachers are exempt from this, meaning if you have doctors, lawyers, and teachers, you don't have to worry about this. Okay. If you have paralegals, nurses, or instructional assistants, you do need to worry about this. This is relevant to them. Okay. We can walk you through it. We can help you do the math. If you need help, just reach out and we are here for you. Pay attention to your job classifications. Who's exempt, who's non-exempt. I have seen companies disappear on this one thing because they called people contractors who were not, and they called people salaried exempt who were not. And when they get caught by the IRS or the Department of Labor, the penalties were so severe that they just couldn't do it. And they declared bankruptcy and walked away. And that's a sad sight. I don't ever like to see that. I'm a lover of small business, a champion of small businesses, and I want to see them succeed across the board. So pay practices is a big deal. Don't do auto deducts for meal periods or breaks. Those are just only going to get you in trouble. If you're doing that, I would say stop, because if people work through their lunch, then they're going to say, I worked through my lunch, but it auto deducted 30 minutes. I didn't get paid, and you're busted. It's just hard to get around that. If you're in states like California that require certain kind of breaks or approval not to do certain breaks, make sure you know what's required there and that you've got your process down airtight. Comp time is something you should not do unless you work for the government. If you're in a private company, comp time is not a thing. Don't talk about it. Don't do it. There is this little tiny thing where it's possible to be legal, but I don't even want to talk about it. So ignore that and just don't do it. Say Scott said, don't do it. Comp time is like when you say, hey, you know what? Take off halfway through Friday and we'll pay you for the full day Friday instead of paying you for the overtime that you worked last week or whatever, right? Don't do that. Just track the time, pay the overtime when it's owed, okay? Independent contractors is a hot button, and auditors are going after that. So be careful calling people contractors if they're actually employees, okay? Making sure you're tracking all the time worked. We run across a lot of small businesses who don't track time or say, we just want to call them salaried, not exempt. That's fine, and it's okay to do that. But if the employee ever has a claim against you, and remember, today's coworker is tomorrow's litigant. You never know what's going to upset somebody, or if company changes, you need to have layoffs or restructure or whatever, people feel slighted, they will come back. So make sure you're tracking that time properly so that you can say, we tracked the time, we paid for all time worked, including overtime. And then make sure you understand what the overtime bonus calculation is. If you're paying bonuses to hourly employees, the amount of that bonus needs to be added back in to their full pay in the period they earned it, which adjusts their overtime rate. And then you typically might need to do a little overtime catch-up payment. That's another thing that a lot of people don't even know about. So if you have questions about that, reach out and we will be glad to explain it. Also, many states have final pay requirements. Like California, if I let you go, I got to hand you a live check on the spot that day, right? Like, you got to be ready for it. So if you don't know that, you can get in trouble real quick if California is a new state for you. So know what those are, and then know what the benefits eligibility requirements are, especially if you're covered by the Affordable Care Act. And we're getting there, folks. I promise we're getting there. So stick with me. One of the things I like to do at the end of the year is to get organized. So sometimes we have kind of a slow week between Christmas and New Year's where people are like, don't talk to me, don't bother me, right? And I can take that time to say, I'm going to go through my inbox. I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to eliminate stacks of paper I have sitting around on my desk or in my office. I'm going to look at vendors that I have contracts with and say, when do those expire? What are we doing with pricing? Is this somebody we're going to, is a good partner we're going to continue working with? It's also a good time to look at everybody who's being paid by your company and accounts payables and say, who is this and what are we paying them for? And I promise you, if you haven't done it in a while, you're going to find some things in there that you go, wow, there's some wasteful stuff going on and we could clean that up, right? Archive old folders, just like inventory in a warehouse. If you're an HR person, we all keep everything. We share everything. I get it. I'm with you. I'm right there with you on that. I don't, I pulled out a thumb drive from 1990 something the other day, and the people on my team started dying laughing, especially when I tried to use it and it wouldn't even work on my computer. It's so old, but I was like, I got good stuff on here. I don't want to let it go. So archive stuff, put it away if you're not using it. Be merciless when you're doing that. Keep what you use and get rid of the rest. Start your budget planning for next year. What are you planning for your team? Increases, promotions, bonuses, rewards, swag, whatever it is, training budgets. You have people on your team who are getting certified, plan for that. Do you have employees on leave who are going to cross over from one year to the next? When will they return? Are you communicating with them? Is their status updated in the payroll platform? And then also leverage your technology for licensing. Some companies have a full-time person. This is all that he or she does is licensing, but you can automate most of that in the system. Enter it when you hire them or when it needs to be updated with auto reminders to managers and the employee. Everything else can be done in your system. So use your system to make your time better. And then payroll data. Some of this I mentioned. Make sure you're looking at your pay ranges. Are they updated? Are they current? Your year-end deadlines. Do you have blackouts for PTO? Like nobody can take PTO during this time. We're a payroll company, so we do have certain periods where our support team and implementation team cannot take vacation because they need to be here and available for our clients for sure. Make sure your employees have the correct tax elections because tax season is coming and you don't want them to go, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Even though there's not much time, make sure they can change it if they want to. Emergency contacts, look at your vacation PTO accrual plans and make sure those are set up properly to cross over into the next year. If you have rollovers or use it or lose it, anything like that. If you want to adjust your holiday schedule, we change ours every once in a while at Thread. And then make sure that you have a pay calendar that you can share with your team so they know exactly when they're getting paid. Some people tell me I'm old school on the pay calendar and go, you don't need that anymore. But, I like to look up on the wall or on my computer and go, oh, okay, this is when I'm getting paid. It's just easy to see. I'm a big fan of quick and easy reference points. When it comes to training, if you want to stand out as an organization, companies universally struggle with onboarding and training. So if you can do a good job of onboarding new employees, being prepared when they get there, at Thread, we have a 2-week plan. Every day is mapped out. Who you're meeting with, what you're doing. By the end of your first 2 days, you should be able to do X and you should know Y. At the end of your first week, you should know this and be able to do this, right? That way it's focused time. Your new hire is not going, I don't know what to do. They're not just standing around. Most companies are extremely poor at onboarding because it just takes time. And most of us as small and growing business don't have the onboarding person who manages this and runs it. It's just another thing that's on our plate in HR. But if you can focus time on this, make it a goal, a quarterly goal to improve that process, to document it, to train your managers on it, it would be great. Use your learning management system for all the required harassment, discrimination, HIPAA, all that training. And then if you're working with us, we include training in our HR support model. So we sell 3, 6, 8, 10-hour a month packages. So we can scale up or down with you, whether you're big or small. We have clients who pay for much more time than that, but most of our clients are in the 3, 6 to 8 hours a month range. And we include the training. So we train your managers and supervisors. We have a list of 20-something topics. We're glad to do that. We help with wage and hour compliance, all this. But I think the basics would be compliance for supervisors. You don't have to get into what is the Fair Labor Standards Act. You just say, here's what you need to know, what you should do, should not do, and this is why, right? Break it down. Don't give them the history of the law and all that. They don't care. Just tell them what they need to know. And then management skills are really important. It's almost like, you know, I had open heart surgery when I was 31, and I never saw the surgeon again. He never came in and sat down next to the bed and said, "Hey, everything went well, you're okay." And that has driven me nuts ever since. And I'm 55 now. So that soft skill of how to talk to people and connect and answer questions they have is really, really important. Remember, we have that free webinar on our website at threadhcm.com that talks about social media and recruiting. I would definitely check that out. Barb and Christina did an awesome job with that. But your culture and brand is reflected in the events you hold, what you post on LinkedIn or anywhere else, the surveys you do with your employees. You must respond to those surveys. So never do a survey unless you are going to respond. If your leadership team is going to stick that in the drawer because they don't like what they heard, then don't even bother doing it. It's going to be way worse to ask the questions and not respond than if you ask the questions and then said, "Hey, here's what we heard from you, and here's what we're going to do or not do, and this is why." You know, we're going to push that off a little bit, but we did hear it, and we're going to address that at a different time. Look at your policies and practices. They should match. If your written policy doesn't match your actual practice, then I would probably change your policy. It's easier to change a written policy than it is to change a practice. And then you could change the policy later once the practice is ingrained in your organization. Be intentional with any of your messaging along the way to make sure it measures up to your brand. When you're interviewing employees as well, does this measure up to our brand? You got a chat here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, this is Barb telling me to get on with it. I get excited and I talk a lot. But also, end of the year is a good time to analyze turnover, safety incident rates, your benefit plan design, benefit options, your budgets, right? Look at all of those things. What should we change? What's different about next year that we should adjust? Are you experiencing wage compression where you have current positions that are making less than the people you're bringing into the same position, and how you're going to address that? That's a common thing. Are your processes and plans aligned with the goals of the company and the direction of the company? Remember when I said understand how your company succeeds? That's really important to this. And then the right metrics. So now that we have changed to more of a hybrid remote workforce in a lot of places, those metrics are more important than ever. And I'll give you a quick example. When I started the HR consulting business at Thread, my metrics were first-time appointments. In other words, how many times was I meeting with brokers, employment attorneys, CPAs, business owners, HR folks, to try to grow the business, right? Then, as we started to grow the business and add new clients, my metric changed to number of new clients, right? Because I was selling it and doing it. Then as our team grew and our sales team grew, so we have a sales team, and then now I have a great HR team, clients, my metrics switched to profit metrics. So, okay, we've started it. Now we want to make it profitable. So let's put a metric around that. Let's measure it. Let's drive behavior towards that. Once we became consistently profitable in our business here, then we changed to operational efficiency metrics about time under budget. So if you're paying me for 8 hours a month, I want to make sure that we're not doing 12, right? Because that's not a sustainable business model. You're paying for 8, you're getting 12. We got to make sure you're getting that 8, but not over consistently, because then our labor costs go up, right? And you get a bad business case there. We also measure client engagement. So keep those metrics as relevant as you possibly can for each position. Every single person at Thread has a metric. Now, second to last slide here are your goals. This is kind of the wrap up overall, which is, what is your growth strategy? Remember to put yourself first and think about how you're going to grow, what you're going to do. Make it a priority to laugh with your friends. Put it on your calendar if you need to, breakfast, lunch, beer, whatever it is. And then remember that you are going to fill in your compliance gaps. Thread's HR managed services team will be glad to help you with that. We will help you fill in your skills or knowledge gaps as well. We often train the person we're working with along the way because they have some experience but haven't done it all, and go, I would love to learn from this, and we build them up in that way. Look at your processes, your technology, your employee engagement, client engagement, all of that kind of stuff. I know it's a lot, but this is what we get paid for. And the reason we are HR people is because we were able to handle a lot. That's why somebody came in one day and goes, you're in charge of HR. So Barb is going to follow up with the credit codes for HRCI and SHRM and a link to book time with me for free for any questions, no charge. I'll be glad to help. My mission in life is to have a positive impact on another person every day. I got that from the CEO of the first company where I did HR. He said that to every new employee on every first day, have an impact, positive impact on the life of another person every day. And I bought into that, and I still try to do that. So helping makes me happy. Give us the opportunity to help. Thank you very much. Hope to talk to you soon.
Hey, Scott, real quick, we did get a question come in. I just chatted it out in the chat, but I'll go ahead and give you a quick read. I've
Okay.
always refrained from giving prospective candidates that we have passed on feedback on their resume or interview, as I've been concerned a claim could come back from having done so. Any advice or guidance for feedback to candidates that don't make the cut for a role? Obviously, we would never select a candidate based on a protected class, but I do hear from managers that the person just wasn't a fit. Some examples of feedback to candidates that haven't been hired and how that feedback was conveyed, maybe verbal rather than in writing, would be helpful. Any thoughts around do that?
Yeah, so I gauge the person's personality and how badly they need feedback first. If someone has a really good interview and they're just not a fit based on experience or whatever, that's exactly what I tell them, right? It's just your experience. We were looking for X and you're Y. So it's very straightforward. Sometimes I will say, we don't have an opportunity for you at Thread, but if you are open to feedback, and I totally understand if you're not, then I'd be glad to schedule a little time and talk about some interviewing tips or some resume tips, things like that. And people go, yeah. I've never had anybody say no. People go, please. One time I told a guy, I said, you didn't make eye contact with me during the whole interview. And I said, you have great experience, and it's perceived as a lack of confidence when you're not looking someone in the eye when you're talking to them. So when you go to your next interview, make it a point to, don't stare at somebody and give them crazy eyes, but make sure you are making eye contact when you're talking to someone so they feel your confidence and your interest as well. I will also tell people, hey, would you mind if I gave you a few tips on your resume? And they'll say, please, and I'll give them the tips and go from there. And people are so appreciative. So I give them things that are safe, but will help them in their job search.
Awesome. Well, my message definitely sped you up. I warned everyone you're going to be 10 minutes over, but if anyone does have any more questions, please feel free to chat them in. If you don't want it to be public, you can chat it directly to me or Scott. But very insightful. You did get through a lot in a lot of time. We are going to get you that follow-up email with the slides and the recording, and I'm going to make it into a checklist. Thank you for the recommendation. But we are here if you need anything. Scott is definitely happy to help.
All right. Y'all have a great day.